Hello and welcome to DM&D, where we talk about all things running Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games. I am your host, Argent Wind, here on the Tanker Discord servers and our YouTube channel here. Um, uh, Hopefully, you're all gonna get some good information today. We are looking at getting established. And what we're talking about today is literally how to get a campaign off the ground and keep it going in those early stages. A lot of campaigns tend to fizzle out after a shorter time here, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And we're going to talk about how to help with some of those reasons, how to prevent some of those things from happening, or how to just sort of see what kind of things we can do to prevent it from happening in the first place. So, as always, we are talking about things that we talked similar issues in the past here. Specifically, if we want to go here and look at if you look at the Temple Tankard YouTube channel, there you'll find a playlist of all of our DM&D shows here. Campaign episode number 2, way back, is all about setting up campaigns. Just general information about campaigns. Episode 6 was keeping it going, how to kind of keep a campaign going. This is like sort of like how to go long term with a campaign. And so today we're kind of talking about those very first like couple of weeks, those first like 4 or 5 sessions here. A little bit different than that. We also talked about in episode number 13, we talked about how to bring coming back to a campaign after a hiatus or after some sort of interruption. And those are some of the main ones here that are going to kind of touch off today. Um, Now, part of the inspiration for this video today actually came from a very well-known source. Those of you who are out there looking at other information, other DM&D shows, tip shows, and else, Matt Colville, amazing guy here. MCDM Productions. He's done some amazing stuff there. He has a whole series called Running the Game, and he's sort of one of the inspirations I had for doing a show like this. And so. Um, this episode came from his most recent video he posted here, and he was talking about players, how to be good players, how to be helpful players and help the DM and things that they can do. And some of the things he mentioned there kind of really resonated with me from the DM side as well. And so I've experienced campaigns that have fizzled in the past. I've heard of friends telling stories about campaigns that they wanted to go, it just didn't happen. And so we're going to talk about how ways to keep those campaigns from fizzling out. Um, Now, first thing when it comes to a campaign here is you need to be realistic in your expectations. If you know you can't run a campaign for months or years, don't plan for a campaign that's going to take months or years to do. Plan for a shorter amount of time and make that clear when your players are signing up to play your game or when you're gathering together here saying, hey, I'm only planning about maybe 4 or 5 sessions. If it runs longer, awesome. But I'm only planning for a fairly short campaign here, a very short, like an extended one shot or whatever. Be clear in your expectations, both with yourself and your players, because it's really important that everyone knows what's going in here. If they're expecting a long running game, or if you want to run a long running game and it's not clear how that's going to happen there, you're going to tend to fizzle out because your expectations weren't made clear. So, and things about that too is understanding that scheduling is hard. It's hard to get like 5 or 6 people to open up their schedules and have a regularly scheduled time where they're going to play and be available. So keep that in mind that your scheduling is going to be difficult. Um, Flexibility. Sometimes people aren't flexible in their schedules. So if you have somebody that kind of come, if you have to make a change, your players may not be able to accommodate it. Like if you need to change nights or change times or whatever else, that's going to impact how well the campaign is going to continue as well. If you're planning for Tuesday nights at 6 and suddenly you need to go, hey guys, I need to start at 5 instead, or hey, can we do Wednesday nights at 6 instead? Chances are you're going to have a hard time getting all your players to make that kind of a change. Um, the best way to do that is to let them know well in advance. If you spring it on them early, they're not going to be able to change it on the fly. We all have things to do. We have families, we have friends, we have plans. So keep in mind is that flexibility is important, but not everyone's going to have the same flexibility as you. So that's a really important thing when it comes to scheduling and comes to setting up a campaign is Know when you're going to run and be consistent, because no one can plan for something if you're changing it all the time. It's a really big one there. Uh, Campaigns can often fizzle out because the campaign just isn't what people wanted to do. So when you have your session zero, when you're describing your campaign to your players until that, be clear in what you expect the story to be about. Obviously you can't tell them the plot, but know the tone of the game. Know uh um the kinds of things to watch out for. And yes, consent tools can be very important in this, letting people know this is the kind of game we're going to run. If you're not on board with that, let me know ahead of time. And that way you don't have people suddenly going, "Ooh, this is gross. I'm out of here." 2 sessions into the game. If they were made aware of it and they were okay with it, you're going to have a lot less difficulty with that aspect of your campaign. So, and then if you do tell them this is what the campaign is going to be about, don't switch it up. Don't suddenly introduce something that you said you weren't going to do in session three, because you are going to really set people off and say, "Whoa, I didn't sign up for this. We didn't talk about this being a thing in this game. I'm not okay with it." So you can lose players that way. And losing players is one of the fastest ways for a campaign to fizzle out. You need players to continue. So obviously, if your players, if one or two, three players bail because they don't like the content of the game or the tone of the game, then you're going to fizzle out the campaign. So be clear in the tone and the expectations and the things that you're going to be campaign is going to be about, and make sure that you don't go against that. It's really important that people. I mean, you don't, again, we we come here to have fun, and that's one thing you want to keep in mind here. It's a big rule for all of this, is that everyone should be having fun, you especially, but your players too. If your players aren't having fun, you're not going to have fun, because it's going to come out in the game. They're just sort of sitting there, or they're upset about things. If you're not having fun, it's not going to keep going. So again, knowing the tone of the game, knowing that kind of the elements of the game they're going to have, that's going to go a long ways toward keeping your players happy, keeping you happy, and having everyone have fun. Um, when you're setting up, and this is one of those things here, and we're going to come back to the player side of this in a little bit here, but when players are making their characters, you can say no. I mean, a lot of times people are like, "Oh no, you can't say no," but yes, and maybe there. If something does not work in your campaign, if you explicitly have a reason why it's not an element of your world, or if you're the there, let the players know that. It shouldn't be a deal breaker for most people. If they are set on playing a goblin, you say, "Hey, goblins are bloodthirsty monsters. You can't play a character that. They are the bad guys in this game." Okay, then making a goblin character would not work out. Um, but make that clear. And if you do have to say no about something, explain it. Make sure it's clear in that, so that we don't have something unexpected happen. I was in a game with very good friends of mine, local game here with friends here, and there was something that the DM sort of like said, "Oh yeah, this is an element in the game there. There's kind of this people have a problem with dark elves." Okay, the reality of that was they don't have a problem with them. They actively discriminate and hate them. So when a player made a character, actually two people made a character that were drow characters, went into their first city, and suddenly everyone was hostile to them. Like, we didn't realize it was that much of a problem. So, and the DM didn't make that clear. So those characters should have never been made in the first place. And so they realized really quickly on that, hey, we need to make some different characters. This is a problem. We can't do this. So again, that's one of your, if you need to say no, explain it. Be reasonable in that. But there are times that yes, you can say no. If it's not something that's in your world, if there's a reason why it's not in your world, then make that clear. So that players don't get suddenly so like invested in, I want to play this kind of character in this race and this class, and you say, sorry, that's not a thing. At least they have a way early on to switch it up to something else. Okay. Um, the main thing around it is some character concepts just don't fit in the world. They don't fit in the campaign. If you're playing a game that's all based around like hunting undead, and they want to bring an undead character in, that's a problem. Now you're basically a member of the enemy is in the party. If you're trying to play a game in the Feywild and you make a character in who just hunts and kills fairies all the time, or any kind of fey creature, that might be a problem because now you're in the land of the fairy and the Feywild, and you're going to have a really bad time with this now because you're going to want to kill everything, and the rest of the party's not. So sometimes the character concept doesn't fit. So make sure you we're aware of that. And if it's something where the character has brought this element into the game and you're like, okay, that's fine, keep that in mind as you're designing your campaign. As the campaign goes on, there are some things you're probably going to need to avoid based on who's in your party. Or make it so that it's a challenge, but not a game breaker if they have this aspect as part of their time. Um, yes, Dow, thank you very much. As a DM, you want to kill the party a lot. Of course, you want to kill the party. You can ban healers. You can make things a lot more difficult in terms of power levels differences. Um, so, uh, but and one thing to keep in mind here, if that's the tone of the game, this is a deadly, dangerous, terribly vicious kind of game here. You will very likely be in danger of dying, if not losing characters throughout the game here. Make that clear in the party. And if people aren't okay with that, they're going to let you know and either not join the campaign to start with or say, okay, we know what to expect. Let's do this. So again, naming your expectations there. And if your intent is to be a bloodthirsty DM with all kinds of nasty, terrible things, make that clear. Some people love that, the danger element of a game. Some people they're maybe not like happy that their characters are die, but the idea of their characters could die anytime is exciting. It's thrilling. It's can be frustrating, but at the same time, if you know it going in, you know what to expect, and it's not going to be a surprise halfway down the road when your third session and someone's getting killed by something that's way too powerful for them. So it can set the tone. Okay. Um, a big thing with campaigns, and this is something here, is don't bite off more than you can chew. And what I mean by that is sometimes we get a campaign started and we think, hey, we're going to go crazy. We're going to do all this stuff. And you may have something that I'm going to have this massive plot arc plan that's going to take me 6 months to a year to do. And they're going to be level 20 by the time we're done with this. And it's like, that's a lot to get going when you first start. So when you think about when your campaign's starting, keep it kind of small. You may have ideas where it's going to go, and ultimately, you may have ideas where the story is going to ultimately maybe even end. But understand that there is a long journey between here and there. And if you rush it, it's going to feel like it's rushed. If you start a party at like level 1, they're fledgling heroes here, and they're going to go slay a dragon. Well, they're not doing it in the third session. Um, that's not going to happen. They're going to get roasted at that point, or just smashed and eaten or whatever else that because they're not going to be able to handle it. So, if that is your idea that this is the ultimate goal of going to this dragon's lair and killing a horrible dragon, build up to it there. So again, you're not biting off more you can chew right off the bat here. You're not setting people up for failure and frustration in session 3 of the game. Make the challenges somewhat appropriate, maybe a little difficult, but you can definitely see where people are. And if you see that they're frustrated, if you see that they're having a hard time with it there, maybe tone it back, maybe dial it back, maybe put in a session that's a little more fun, a little less deadly. So that way it kind of reignites the fun of the campaign. So again, that ultimate goal you have is down the road, and you're going to build there over time. Okay. And understand you don't have to have the ending figured out when you first start. You may have a vague idea that they're going to be in this region fighting something from here. It's going to involve vampires. That could be something that your campaign leads up to, but you don't have to figure it all out right away. You can kind of see where the players take you, see where the story takes you along the way to kind of meander your way to this ultimate idea here. And at some point, as you're going on, you'll start fleshing that out a little more based on what just happened so far. There's going to be little events or NPCs or things that the players have done or not done that's going to set up more and more details down the road for you. So again, you don't have to start off right away. I know this entire campaign. Now, if you are a DM that does that, great. More power to you. That's the way published adventures often are. They have the whole story laid out there. And it's sort of how it sort of gives you the roadmap of here are the events to take along the way that will ultimately get you here. But you are not required to do that. You don't have to be that way to have fun with a campaign. And so, if that's intimidating to you, that's difficult for you, that's fine. You don't have to do it. Okay, keep that in mind. Um, I touched on this already here, but a lot of times your campaigns can be driven by the inspiration you draw from your players. This can come from their backstories, things they set up there in their backgrounds. Like, I'm a character from here. Well, now you know that, hey, it'd be kind of cool to drive for the campaign to end up somewhere there where this person is from. And now it become the focus point of the campaign for a session or two or longer, or a whole plot arc involving that country they're from. Because it's in their backstory, it's part of who they are, and now they get to sort of either shine or people get to learn more about that player, that character in their party because they're now on their homeland. They're now seeing their family. These are fun things to do, and it's something you didn't plan for at the start, but because a player offered it up in their backstory, you can weave that into the campaign. You can make that a plot point that you kind of work your way to and then beyond from there. So use that inspiration from your players, their backstory, but also use the inspiration of the players during the game. If these two players decide that the characters are really well linked and hey, this is something here, let them have fun with this relationship that they're building. Either be a rivalry, it could be a romance, it could be just something that hey, we're going to form a partnership and do these cool things. That's a really fun element to bring into the campaign to then weave into the story to bring into those events here. These two people want to team up and make a business or buy a shop and start doing things here. Well, that's a cool thing to do. And if the campaign allows for it, if you make it allow for it there, you can have players that, hey, we want to set up a shop. Now we need to hire someone to watch the shop, and then we're going to go out adventuring to find items to put in the shop or and the campaign turns into a new thing here. And okay, the shop is established. Let's move on to another country and let's make a franchise in a new city in a new country. Cool. You now have a whole merchant based campaign that you may not have planned for, but because the players were really excited about this and had fun with it, you can now do that as part of your campaign. So, drawing inspiration from your players. If they love an NPC, then you may want to have that NPC. If it's established in a certain place, then the campaign may spend more time around that place so they can interact more with that NPC. If they have ways of you bring that NPC with them or doing jobs for that NPC, now the campaign has because they showed interest. They really showed something they really enjoyed in the campaign. Now you have something to hit to kind of hint to act as inspiration for future events in your campaign. On the flip side, if they're really rivals or they hate this guy they ran into and the guy gets away and now there's a villain, you have a recurring villain potentially that you didn't plan for, but because this one bandit kingdom captain or whatever else they ran into on the road with a random encounter, but this bandit captain escaped. Well, now that guy may show up again, or they may go hunting for that guy or whatever else, or in the next town, they may be asking, "Have you seen this guy?" Whatever. Oh yeah, he's wanted for this, this, and this. There's a bounty on his head. Okay, now there's a whole story that's woven from a random encounter where somebody got away. An event in the story leads to driving the campaign forward in a way that the players are going to enjoy. They're going to find themselves really, um, really focusing on and dealing with this. Yes, in the current campaign we're running in there, Orson Pyrus there. He's in everything we're doing. He's the bad guy everywhere. It's crazy. Um, But having someone you meet early on turn into a villain later on is a fun way to go. Or something that, hey, they didn't realize this person was a bad guy at all, and now he is. And now what do we do about that? Or, hey, this problem we ran into before is really involved with this guy over here. Or so now you have something to go after and deal with. Um, and yes, now exactly. Sometimes you have to remind the players to read their own backstories. And it's one of those things that some people are going to be more devoted to their backstory than others. And this is where players are going to be different. They write something in their backstory and then forget about it. And you might have to say, you may, and I would do this away from the table or do a whisper in a game there or in between games and saying, hey, you did something that you put something in your backstory about this person here. Let's talk about that. Let's flesh that out a little bit. What does that mean? Who is that person? And so that gives them a player that maybe it's something they just kind of throw away line in their backstory, or just, oh yeah, I had a childhood rival who went out there. Who was that person? What happened to them? Had you ever seen them again? So um, they may have, for whatever reason, they may have thrown a backstory and didn't think about put too much thought into it there, or they made a very very detailed backstory, but they forgot some of the details in that thing here. So, if you can revisit backstories occasionally and find new little nuggets of inspiration for your campaign, that's going to go a long ways toward again driving the campaign forward. And it's again the earlier you can do it, the more your campaign gets established. And I can't stress enough here that if you can get in the first like 5 sessions where something important to the characters, either in their backstory or they show interest in something, if that becomes a focal point of the campaign, they're hooked. They're going to be invested. They're going to want to keep coming back here. And again, you've got lots of inspiration to keep the campaign going. They now see that the choices that they've made, either in character creation or in the first few sessions now, are having an effect on the campaign. It gives them agency over what's happening. It gives them inspiration themselves of, hey, we did this thing here, and the guy's now giving us a discount because we did a job for him. This guy's really cool and we like him. Now they have more uh they're going to be more willing to do that again when they meet other people. If they know that, hey, those choices you make will yield results, will yield rewards for you, they're going to keep doing it. And that means they're engaged with the campaign and you are established and running. Um, So, yeah, unknown archer that shoots one of the players and runs away like every third episode. I mean, it would be fun to have a person just keep annoying the party, um, and then find out like who is that guy? What is he doing? Um, there's lots of story elements like that in the past. Like this, like who is this guy? Why is he doing this? Let's find out. The players are hooked over some little thing of like someone being annoying and doing something like that. It seems silly, but that's a great way to hook the players and keep things established there. Um, so and now learn the hard way with my first DM series. Players had a hard time remembering their character and the traits. It's a lot of new players have a hard time with that. So one of the things you can really help yourself with is knowing them yourself and just saying, "Hey, um, based on that thing you have, that choice you made in your character, here's how that's going to work." And it may be something you do outside of the game, or you just say, hey, you know what? Because uh, you have a chef background, you, uh, you know that these are high quality ingredients they're using here, or this is really a bad seedy tavern, or this place is storing, uh, grain for a local place and it's really off and messed up. And now suddenly, hey, oh, I'm a chef. I should check this out here. Oh, yeah, this is really bad stuff here. Are they giving this to the local merchants? Are they giving this to the local bakers? That's terrible. What should we do? We should go tell them about this. And suddenly, that little thing, I had a chef background. Well, now you have an element of the story that came from their background. And other players seeing that little thing where you call out something that's a character trait, or a feat, or a class option, or a skill they might have there. Calling those out are going to have other players go, "Ooh, what do I have that's going to be useful in the future? What do what how would this be worked in?" And Some people go a little bit overboard with it, and this where you might want to need to rein it in a little bit sometimes because they'll go, "Hey, I have this skill, so I should be able to do everything." Well, not necessarily, but where it can, where it makes sense, you can really let those players shine. And again, doing that in the first like 4 or 5 sessions, they're going to be really having fun, really knowing that their character choices mattered, and they're going to have a lot to do with the game from that forward. They're a lot more inspired to be in the game and to be a part of the world that you're building together, the story you're building together. Um, so to kind of flip this around here, to bring it back around to Matt Colville, and one thing we talked about here is his video was really about players, how to be good players. And there's some elements here that, again, are really important if you're a player, if you're a DM getting a chance to play in a game, which is awesome here. Think about these kind of things here is that getting a campaign established and keeping it rolling, we already mentioned this before, is really the players have a lot of influence on that. So be aware of that as a player, being engaged, being like taking notes, especially in the early stages of the game there, knowing what you're running into, knowing the names of the people you ran into, going back and talking to them again, and really like trying to like dive into the plot and know what's happening here. That's really a helpful thing for your DMs. And as a player, you're going to help get a campaign established by doing these things. Um, as a player, being respectful of other people's time. If you know you can't be in a long running campaign saying, "Hey, I'm only going to be in the first 4 or 5 sessions and I'm going to have to bow out. But please help find another player here and let's have a way for my character to exit the game." And so that way it's part it there you the player having to leave the game, now the character can have an exit as well, which adds to the story. Even though you're losing someone from the table, there's something that will help drive the story forward. Okay. So again, being communicating with your DM, playing like communicating with the other players, and being respectful of everyone else's time. If you show up late, if you miss games frequently, and it's not something obviously we all have difficulties. Scheduling is a problem for everybody. We all have families, we all have lives, we all have other responsibilities, and it's not always possible to be at every game here, and that's understandable. But making it known as early as you can, that's a really helpful thing for everybody involved here, saying that, yep, we know you aren't going to be here, or, oh, really sorry about that. That's really a good thing to um, keep in mind for everyone else here. So everyone knows what's happening. Um, and lastly, and this is one straight from Matt Colville's mouth here, is make your characters likable. I can't stress that's enough here. There is nothing more frustrating than a player who's just not likable. And I don't mean they need to be like super awesomely cool and just great. And everything. Just don't be a person who's like, well, that's what my character would do. And just screwing over the rest of the party, making things difficult for the DM, doing all these things of like, hey, no one's going to want to be around this character. They're a jerk. They are not fun to be around. And so if if your player is making a character that way and making those choices, you're going to make things difficult for everyone. And so again, if you have a character who in the first like 2 or 3 sessions is already stealing from the party, taking things from people, being a jerk to the NPCs, killing people that your party is trying to talk to, stealing things from everyone they see, that can be really frustrating to deal with, both as a DM and as other players. So while your character can definitely be quirky and fun and goofy and that, focus on making characters that are likable, that A, you like, but also that the party will like. And I don't mean they have to be like love old girl something here, but not be antagonistic toward. They're going to like being around that person. They're going to want to work. They're going to want to work with them. And then making players that your character, the DM is going to like. If a DM is like, oh my god, this character is just so annoying. That's going to be harder for the DM to really kind of work into the campaign and keep doing things around that character. Now, there are ways to work around that. There are ways to kind of talk to your DM about, hey, I know this guy's being abrasive here, but I want him to have some sort of a cool uh like change moment. This lone wolf character who suddenly becomes a protector to one of the player characters, and now they're really invested in things like that. That kind of character growth and character change is really, really fun. But again, someone who's just an awful character, someone who's going to be a really annoying, abrasive, frustrating character is going to make it hard to really keep the party cohesive. So, as a player, keep that in mind here when you're making your characters, when you're making your character choices. Um, like we can all do crazy, chaotic, fun things, but don't do it in a way that's going to harm the story and harm the rest of the party and be a detriment to everyone's fun and continuing engagement with the story. So we are right at 6 o'clock here, guys. Is there any questions you have for me to throw my way? Those of you who are watching out there, we'll get a couple of questions in here, and if not, we can wrap things up. But I just want to check in to see with folks. Always, I love having you guys in the chat. I love any comments or questions you can get. You can kind of keep things going here. Um, yeah, best DM exit strategy. Dragon eats player. Now player or character. I don't know. um, no, I mean the idea is that that can be a little cathartic if suddenly the problem character gets squashed all of a sudden by something that is terrible. But it can be a little too obvious. Um, Having realistic results of their actions. Um, well, I mean, very, very straightforward here. Character murders an innocent person in the middle of town square. They go to jail. Sorry. Um, it happened in my game here. It was a bad choice a character made, and their character had to pay for it. And I'm not saying the character was uh, that it needed to happen, but it was one of those things of, yeah, story wise, this had to happen. It did not make sense to keep this character around um, after that kind of event happened. So, um, so a player exit, it can be a bit of a challenge, but there's always ways in the story to make it make sense. Um, yes. Um, Sometimes have a party member push the other character out into the road to be run over by headless horsemen. Um, I was in a con game once where I basically had a character uh kill another character and set it up to make it look like an accident. That was fun to do. But it was a con game, it was a one shot. So it's not something I probably would do in a normal game. But then again, in this game we were kind of antagonistic toward each other as it was anyway, so that's kind of the whole point. Um, if you're playing a paranoia game, that's expected. That's part of the game, in fact, in order to kill each other or get each other killed. Um, so, but again, establishing the campaign, knowing that's part of the campaign that you're going to play, and realizing that's a possibility is a different thing there. In an ongoing campaign, doing something like that, I mean, maybe knowing that they're not going to be killed by being run over by the headless horseman, that's definitely something we can look at. Um, Basically causing them to be injured or causing them to be scared by it, then that's definitely. But yeah, if you know they're going to be killed by it, that's probably a problematic thing to do, because the player is going to be rather upset by it as well, potentially. Um, So, as Al said, I love liking your idea the other day of setting points where the player party achieves something, and they can think over changing characters. Yeah, the idea is that, and this is something that maybe we'll talk about in the future a little bit more here. But in character exit, sometimes a character, their story has run its course. They have accomplished what they wanted to do, and it's a time when now it makes sense for them to leave the character to leave the party to go off and do what they wanted to do. They set out, they accomplish their goals, and now they're going to retire or they're going to ride off into the sunset. And they should be able to have that moment. And knowing that from a DM standpoint and a story standpoint, that hey, this is something that's going to happen here. How do we bring in a new character? How do we bring in someone else? And that's where backstory, events of stories. Those are all good things to deal. It is very difficult. Yeah, I mean, Tumble Taker there. That's the it just happened, and it was Nance's character. Um, it was it was very emotional, and it was very challenging, and but it made sense. And from a story standpoint here, it's really important to allow people to have that moment, to do that thing that's like, hey, this is like you don't want to force them into a situation where it doesn't make sense for them to keep going. They have their ending, they have their walk, their exit strategy. It's time to go. So work with them to let that happen. Because again, it's a story, and characters do come and go. That's just the nature of storytelling. So it's really great to do there. So now I'm also trying to come up with some way to use messages between days to use like dreams to set up the next game session with the player. That is a great way to go here. Adding in little plot elements in between games, and then give them ideas for something that, hey, while this downtime is happening, especially if your game ends like you're at the campfire or you're at the inn, you resolve things here. Throwing something that happens in the intervening time between session one and session five and session six, giving that little bit of nugget of information, either the dream sequence, or you get a letter from someone, or a mysterious figure runs up and tells you something, or you in your like you're in the tavern and you see an exchange happen. Any of those things, you've now handed a plot point to a player that they can then hopefully run with. Or, hey guys, I heard this thing at the bar last night. We should check this out. And now the player is now pitching a story or pitching a plot point to the other players at the table. And so they become an active part of the story as opposed to you telling them something. It's like, hey, here's a nugget of information, player. So now the player can take it to the rest of the party and work that out there. And so they may get a little more information from you. So that's a really fun way of driving the story between games. And that, again, will really help establish a game when people know that they're going to learn things outside of game time that they can use in game time. That's really, really fun. I just had an intelligent helm on my head there that told me a whole bunch of weird stuff is going to happen. And sure enough, here we are doing it. And so voices in our head from intelligent items or gods or um, past lives or other friends, they're all great story elements to get people invested in what's going on. Um, yeah, there you go. Guy named from Frederick's Delivery drops off a box for the party's road. I mean, who is this mysterious guy dropping off packages for the road there? Who's the strange guy giving you letters there, Rudin? Um, um, I get it. It's all these things help drive the story there. It gets everyone knowing that there's a bigger, wider world out there, that the world can be a chaotic, strange, interesting place. Those are all ways to really get that campaign rolling and keep people invested, keep people having fun. And that's what it's all about. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up there because uh, I want to keep these videos a little bit shorter these days here, but yeah, thank you for all the feedback there, all the talking there. I love exchanging stories and everything else with you. So as always with these sessions here, if you have an idea for a future session, if you have an idea for a topic you'd like to explore or like to discuss or anything else that, please drop it as a comment in this video here. Or send me a DM, either Discord or other avenues if you have access to that. But yeah, absolutely, I'm always willing to jump in and take inspiration from my viewers, from my friends, from my party members, all you guys out there. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have areas that you just want to explore and delve into some more here, that's what I'm here for. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. And hey, have fun running those games, folks. Take care, everybody. Bye.